I'm going to bet 100 to 1 odds that Olivia Beavers has no idea who Roger Whittaker is. Am I right, Olivia Beavers?
Well, no, I'm just upset that you're right, but
He's,
yes, I
he's
don't know if
singing
I.
this song, and in the 60s, he was sort of England's answer to, I don't know, whoever was a balladeer, and he died at the age of 87 yesterday. Olivia, I need you to explain to me what happened yesterday in the House. I think they fell short of a rule on the National Defense Authorization Act. And what does the Knucklehead Caucus, led by Matt Gaetz, chairman of the only thing he'll ever be chairman of, the Knucklehead Caucus, 5 members, what do they want?
So, let's break it down. There was basically a vote on the appropriations defense rule. So basically, they vote on the rule, and then they actually have a vote on the bill on the House floor. And traditionally, the rules make it through, and then members can express how they feel about a certain piece of legislation. That has started to break down this Congress with mostly Freedom Caucus members. There were 5 members who opposed it yesterday, and because of Republican absences due to family and health reasons, they were able to succeed in blocking the rule. So now there's no way of appropriations going forward, and I'm getting texts from Republicans who are angry saying, you said you wanted votes on individual appropriations bills rather than it all being lumped together and kind of pushed down our throats. But then you vote against the rule when we try to actually do it singly. So there's a lot of frustration. It makes Republicans look like they don't have a path forward in terms of figuring out how to keep the government funded. And, that some of the Republicans who were military veterans, who were moderates and centrists, and battleground Republicans, they went to the steps and voiced their frustration. Matt Gaetz was not part of the 5. He has a pretty strong military presence in his district, so he voted to put forward the rule. But he is one of the leading Republicans in challenging Kevin McCarthy on spending, in addition to my count is there's about 16 Republicans right now who say they oppose basically this framework that is pushing border security. It has different cuts. Some agencies would get an 8% cut, some would get 5% cut. And because they want it to be at the pre-COVID levels of 1.47 trillion, and this is 1.59 trillion. So they feel like it doesn't go far enough, and that's what they've been pushing.
Then help me out with who is. I've done Matt Gaetz wrong, and I apologize. I thought he was part of the 5. I don't mind people negotiating for leverage over the eventual continuing resolution. I hate holding up defense spending. Who are the 5?
The 5, and there's an interesting trend, and I'll tell you about that. So one's Kim Buck, Andy Biggs, Matt Rosendale, Ralph Norman, and Dan Bishop. So 3 of them are running for, or at least eyeing or running for higher office, which is something to kind of keep in mind.
Which 3 are those?
So Ralph Norman he's floated the idea of primarying and challenging Lindsey Graham. Dan Bishop
we'll
is
crush
running.
him. Okay, we'll crush him. Good. Next.
Is running for AG in North Carolina. And then Matt Rosendale
is that Ralph Norman? Who's running for AG in North Carolina?
Dan Bishop.
Okay, we'll crush him too. I've got lots of stations in North Carolina. Good. Who's number 3?
And then Matt Rosendale in Montana is running.
He's already done. Put a fork in that.
But I will say there's an Republican operative who works on Senate campaigns, and they plan to hammer him, basically being like, well, you voted against the most conservative bill that we've had on border and military, and so they're using this as part of their opposition if Rosendale does ultimately jump in, which, you're watching how politics and races play out firsthand with just how the votes happen on the House floor.
Now, Ken Buck's a friend of mine. I'm so glad to hear Ken isn't running for re-election for he's a good congressman. What is his beef with helping the National Defense Authorization Act and the defense appropriation over the border, over the goal line?
So it's going to be a numbers thing for them. So they've been arguing since the debt ceiling limit had been raised that they wanted the number that they had originally passed in the House, not the one that was ultimately agreed to with President Biden, and the one that was successfully made through. And so they're pushing for even steeper cuts, but that gets into a whole other kind of headache, because there are moderates and rank and file Republicans who are not comfortable going to the levels that they're pushing. And they also argue it's dead on arrival in the Senate. So they wouldn't be able to push their policy objectives, and it wouldn't actually make it through, while you're also losing.
Olivia, remind our audience, how many Republicans are there? 221 or 219?
Yep. 221, I believe. Chris Stewart.
Yeah, that's right, 221. So
yep.
It's not about conservative and liberal, because Jim Banks voted for the rule. He ran the Republican study group. He's going to be the next senator from Indiana. Mike Waltz is a Trump-backing Green Beret from Congress to combat sort of guy. Mike Gallagher, they all voted for this rule except these five. It's just these five, and they're crazy. And I hope they run for higher, except Ken Buck's got to wake up. That's just dumb. Ken's a smart guy. I don't get that. So what happens next?
Well, you're going to see, and this is sort of the glimpse into the glamorous life of a reporter, but you're going to see probably multiple different meetings today as they scramble to figure out the path forward. They definitely want to get this passed, but they need to figure out how to get enough Republicans on board with the broader spending plan to pass the House, or they're warning that they're going to get steamrolled by the Democratic-run Senate. So I'll be probably standing outside chasing people as they walk in and they walk out, saying, what are the status of the talks? Are you making any progress? And you're going to have three different narratives that come out. You're going to have the people who are, saying Kevin McCarthy's not doing enough, and this is going to hurt him in the future. The people like Matt Gaetz and some of his critics are going to have some of the negotiators who are more optimistic, saying that they think that they're winning people over, and it's a process, and this is a negotiation, and this is how politics works, and the debate is playing out for the American people to see. And then you will have the people who just don't know what's going on, and they'll think they know what's going on, and they'll try to share information anyway.
I don't believe anybody knows who's not talking to the speaker or the leader or the whip. But my view is Dan Bishop, Ralph Norman, and Matt Rosendale hate the American military. And the idea that they are sacrificing the American debate so that they can run for higher office is repugnant to me, and I hope nobody gives them a dime ever. Now, on the other side, you mentioned the one last thing I want to talk about. The Senate can act if the Republicans can't get their act together and send a bill over. Is that going to happen? Because it's not constitutional. It's not the way it's supposed to happen. But they can fix that defect in the House if they want to. What do you think happens?
That's an option. And I think, senators are talking. I think you're seeing a breakthrough with Senator Collins and Ron Johnson in terms of how they want to approach things. And then the Democrats will be putting forward their plan. So they're going to have a much more bipartisan approach to how this is going to work, and they're largely staying out of the drama. But if they put forward their plan, that gives them leverage, and Republicans are sort of caught flat-footed. That's why they've been arguing, we want to pass something in the House, even if we know it's going to get changed in the Senate, but it gives us leverage to start how these negotiations are going to go.
I can't tell you how many times I've said on this program over 23 years, you've got to get to the conference. Nothing matters until you get to the conference. And the first person to the conference wins. And by getting to the conference, the House version and the Senate version are different. They've got to get to the conference and reconcile, and nothing matters. And whoever gets there has first mover advantage. Then the debate is about what's in their bill. Only the Knucklehead Caucus, and that's the 17, that's Matt Gaetz's caucus, doesn't understand basic congressional work. They just don't. Where's Chip Roy, by the way? He's the smart guy among the 17. Where is Chip Roy?
Roy is not in the 17. So he's actually one of the negotiators who has pushed, him, Byron Donald, Scott Perry, the Freedom Caucus chairman, they were all deeply involved in working with the Main Street Republicans to come up with this framework. So Chip Roy has been out there selling it and saying, like, this is what we need for the border. This is what we need for the cuts. I don't. Some of these Freedom Caucus members are questioning, saying, "What does it take for us to get to a win? Like, how do we win this if you're not going to support this?" And some of them said that they've been asking their colleagues that, and they feel like they're not getting an answer. Their response is usually, "We want steeper cuts." But you're definitely seeing frustrations in terms of how the Freedom Caucus, which is supposed to be a unified, they'll give answers about, we believe in discourse and debate and this, but they're pretty divided right now, and on a matter where they're supposed to be working kind of in a unified way. Spending is something that they all agree on, but they are completely at odds right now over how to move forward. And
Well,
Kevin McCarthy is
I'm
stepping into it.
optimistic with Chip Roy on the good guy side, but I must tell you, Dan Bishop and Matt Rosendale and Ralph Norman should never be elected dog catcher. They're against the American military. They are. They're just against the American military and the people that are protecting their rear ends, and no one should vote for them for anything. Olivia, thank you for your time. Follow her at Olivia Beavers over at X, the site formerly known as Twitter, and read her at Politico. Every single day she knows what's going on in the halls of Congress. She's respected by Republicans and Democrats alike. Thank you, Olivia.